What can I do about harassment? 4 things. You can hold yourself accountable to how you treat other people. Maybe you're making harassing remarks to other people. Maybe you're doing microaggressions to some other people. Halt harassment that's directed at you, halt harassment that's directed at others, and hold leaders accountable for harassing behavior that occurs within their companies and institutions. So hold yourself accountable, as I said, pay attention if you're sent to any of these training programs. Do some self-inquiry, try and figure out what your own biases and assumptions are. Catch yourself, listen when people say that, hey, that's not right, I don't like how you're talking to me right now. Learn how to give an apology. How can you prepare for the potential situation that you're going to be harassed? First of all, it's personal. What might feel like harassment to me might not bother someone else, but that's okay. If it's offensive to me, it's offensive to me. But it can catch you by surprise. So make a plan in advance about how to halt or confront harassing behavior. I also want to highlight the fight, flight, freeze response to threat, and especially the freeze response. What I've learned from people I've spoken with who have told me that they have a history of sexual trauma is that sometimes they respond by freezing. And then if you later ask that person, well, why didn't you speak up for yourself? Why didn't you say something? Literally, they have frozen, and literally they're not able to form the words to say anything. If this is you, maybe it can be helped with counseling. But if it's not you, have some sympathy, please, for people that might be experiencing this. So you can watch for red flags. Someone requesting to communicate on alternative platforms. For example, when you make a phone call, there's a record at the phone company, and also when you use regular texting. But when someone starts to text you or wants to message you in a different platform, it might be a way that they're trying to hide that they're messaging you, trying to hide that from a spouse, for example. Or that there's not a record, or that they can delete that whole message thread so that then you don't have a record of what they said to you. Snapchat might be an example there, but there are others too. Consumption of alcohol, watch if someone's pushing alcohol on you and that kind of thing. And if something doesn't feel right, trust your gut. And this is why I want to give a shout out to this book listed on the screen, The Gift of Fear. It came out over 20 years ago. It's been a bestseller multiple times. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. And it'll tell you why you need to trust your gut, because it's giving you good information to watch out. Here's some things please don't do if you're being harassed. First of all, don't assume it'll never happen to you. I have a little story there where I've had a couple people, I'm on some social media platforms. I talk about harassment happening on those platforms, and I've had some people say, well, that doesn't happen, or that doesn't happen to me. So don't assume that just because it doesn't happen to you that it's not happening, first of all. But also, here's a scenario that I've seen. Where when a woman, for example, learns to fly, or she's in flight training, a student pilot, and then maybe she gets her private. Oh, the people on the airport, in the aviation community, they're like, oh, isn't that just cute? That's just precious. Well, then maybe she keeps going and gets her instrument rating, her multi-rating, her commercial rating, her certified flight instructor certificate. And now all of a sudden, she may have surpassed some of those people in expertise and in credentials. And suddenly she's not so cute. And now the little snippy remarks begin. Anyway, don't respond in kind. Try not to be passive aggressive. By the way, I think sometimes when people respond passive aggressively, that's a response coming from a place of less power. I just wanted to mention that. Try not to do name calling, and don't blame this one person who might be like the final straw that breaks the camel's back, but try not to blame them for everything else that's happened to you previously. So here's what I suggest you can do about harassment. Let's use our flight safety model of aviate, navigate, communicate. Aviate. Safety first. Get to safety. If you're in flight, get the aircraft on the ground safely. Get away from danger. Get everyone away from the danger. And if there's been physical violence or assault or injuries, such as rape, sexual assault, you can call law enforcement. You can call the sexual assault hotline. You can go to the hospital or emergency room. Navigate. So check in with yourself. Your adrenaline might be going. You might be really upset, angry, anxious. So try to take a time out, breathe, and compose yourself, and come up with a plan about how to address this. Enlist the assistance of bystanders and allies. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. And gather more resources. And if you can, call it out in the moment. You know, bullies especially thrive in silence and acquiescence. And if you just sit there, bullies just seem to do more. And if you can stand up to them and speak up for yourself, set boundaries, it can help. Use clear, direct, and firm language. No, stop. So activate an ally. If there are any witnesses or bystanders around you, research has shown, and from what I've heard from the women and people who've talked to me about being harassed, often the witness, they just they freeze. They're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? They do nothing. Also, after the fact, I'm thinking of a couple examples where then the woman asks the guy, who's a friend even, like, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you stand up, or why didn't you stop him from? And he says, well, I thought you were handling it, or you were quiet, or you looked like it didn't matter, it affect you. So it might rely on you, that you have to activate that ally and spark, make sure that they take action on your behalf. So point at them and enlist their support. Ask them for help. Ask them, tell them what to do. Ask them to do a job. And this can snap them out of that sort of apathetic point of view. So you can just say, hey, is this okay? Are you okay with this? Something like that. And if you are the one who is a witness or a bystander to this type of behavior or conduct, again, just as we talk about in safety and aviation, if you see something, say something. In airline operations, once again, it's now because of past accidents and the past cockpit dynamics, we now have a crew coordination and crew communication that anyone on the flight deck who sees something that threatens the safety of flight is required to speak up about it, no matter what their rank or position is. It can be the jump seater, it can be the first officer, anyone should speak up. So speak up, and you can intervene, and you can confront the harasser yourself, or ignore the harasser. Direct yourself to the person being targeted and offer your support to them. Listen empathetically and back them up. This next slide, this is document both the person, if you're being targeted, but also if you're a witness to someone else being harassed, you can also document. Take photographs, screenshots, video, GoPro, audio recording. You can do a journal. So take note of what was said and done, who did it, what you did about it, if anything, who else was present, witnesses, and what the outcomes were, and save all this documentation. So a quick moment about GoPro and video. I spoke with a woman who did flight training with someone who began harassing her. So she got a GoPro, set it up to record every training session, and just told them, you know what? And it was actually true. She said, after every lesson, I review the video, because then I'm not engrossed with just trying to fly the airplane, and I can listen to what you're saying to me, and I can see what I'm doing right, I can see what I'm doing wrong, and it's a way that I'm learning. Well, guess what else? It tamps down the harassing behavior that this instructor was doing. So consider that as an option. And save all this documentation, even if you make a decision to never make a formal complaint about harassment. Now, you might change your mind later, or something else might happen later that escalates the issue. And you're going to be glad that you have this documentation saved. If you're in a union, you can call your union and ask for representation. You can call professional standards, and you can do this even if the harasser is another member. But it's really important to note that this is not an official report of harassment legally. Also, professional standards does not keep any records. So there won't be a record made, like if some guy named Mike, the same Mike, harasses this person, this person, this person, and this person, there will be no record if the only complaint is made to professional standards. Communicate. So now I've got a couple slides that talk about things that you can say if you're being targeted with harassment. Women often are socialized to be nice. And again, this book that I referred to previously, The Gift of Fear, talks about that and how some predators use that against women to predate on them, people like serial killer like Ted Bundy. So stop people pleasing and being nice when that is not appropriate to the situation. And get used to not being liked. This is not a personality contest. Again, use clear, direct, and firm language. These 3 words are by themselves a complete sentence. No. Stop. Wow. Here's some phrases that you can say that you say without any expression. And I might speed through these because of the time, but again, you can review the video later. All of these slides will be shown. But you can just say, use open-ended questions. What exactly did you mean by that? What are you trying to say? And I've heard it said that if a woman ever says, would you care to say that again? Yeah, you shouldn't say it again. But some people don't learn. And you can just say, hey, I'm here to work. Please don't interfere with my job duties. I'm here to learn. Please don't interfere with my training. If there's an inappropriate remark made about your parental status, about your family status, pregnancy status, just say that's my personal business. I don't have to justify or explain anything to you. You can name the behavior, say the effect that it has on you, and ask that the behavior stop. These are a couple of phrases on how you can do that. These comments are not necessary and not welcome. Please stop now. An ace up your sleeve is to invoke safety of flight. This distracts me, and therefore it interferes with safety of flight. Please stop. You can just say, this is not a joke, it's inappropriate. We are in a time now, and have been for a while, of great discord about politics. And I just saw this phrase, and I'm going to adopt it for myself. And it's like, let's be boring. And boring stands for, we'll just talk about basic operating requirements in normal guidelines. Race, religion, politics, and sex are off limits as topics of conversation. And then hold that line, set the boundary, and maintain that boundary. So again, at the bottom there, a general form of the response is that when you do or say something, it causes the effect on me, and I'm asking you to stop. Reporting. The majority of the people I've spoken with about the harassment that they've experienced did not report that harassment in a formal way. And the reason why is there is retaliation, and there are consequences that their career might suffer, and I get it. But I need to say it's not enough to go on Facebook and complain about being harassed. It's not enough to complain to your friends, and not even to your union, because records aren't kept and no one will be accountable for what they did. And if you think about it, if there's a real serial offender, a sexual predator, If it's not reported, then that person's going to keep going and harass or assault more people. When you make your report, you don't know if it's the first report about that person. And then maybe nothing, there might not be direct consequences that you can see for that person because of that first report. But it's important that you do that, because then if that person harasses or assaults another person and another and another, your first report has already established behavior, and it may take those additional reports to now there's a pattern. Or your report might be the third one or the seventh one that finally makes the employer or the leader of that institution take action. You don't know. That's why you should report. And even if that employer or institution does not take action, it's important that you make your report, because they need to know it's happening, that you're seeing it, and that you're going to hold them accountable for their legal obligation to keep that environment free of harassment and discrimination. How do you report? So every company should have guidelines, and in their company policy or guidelines, how to make the report. So follow those procedures. I suggest you make your report in writing, email, or on paper. Send it to any manager or the human resources department, personnel department, or the legal department, or the business manager or business owner. Stick to the facts and state the impact that this behavior had on your personal safety, on your ability to learn, work, fly, and the impact on safety of flight and aviation safety culture. And you can follow through. You can report somebody on the FAA safety hotline. I want to interject here that you can, like, let's say that you have a problem with a designated flight examiner, a designated pilot examiner. They're acting for the FAA when they give a flight exam, exam, and you can report them to their supervising agency, which would be your local FSDO, Flight Standards District Office. If you do that, hopefully they would investigate it, but there's the potential that they could circle file it. But the FAA safety hotline goes to Washington, D.C. And what I've been told is that if it goes to Washington, D.C., well, now there's a trail, a paper trail. And then they will send it to that FSDO that's the supervisory FSDO for that examiner. And they have to investigate, and they have to report back to Washington, D.C. So it can't just be swept under the rug. If it affected safety of flight, you could file a NASA report or ASAP report or whatever equivalent. Call the EEOC, call the Office of Civil Rights, the Department of Human Rights. If you choose to, you can seek professional advice, legal counsel, and labor law. I'm going to rush through these. They, I think, are of perhaps a little bit of less interest. They're of interest, I think, in the bird's eye view. In flight training, here's the effect that harassment can have. It impedes with the possibility to learn and perform. It introduces distraction, loss of concentration. It can trigger stress or a reaction from past trauma. It pollutes the training environment for everybody. It results in poor training outcomes. It might make a pilot spend more money than they need to on training. It drives people out of aviation. And it can cause a loss of income to the flight school. But more importantly, if it's a Part 141 or a Part 121 training program, it could even jeopardize the FAA approval of that program. In-flight operations. Remember, safety of flight is paramount. Anything that interferes with that it needs to be called out, including harassment. It can interfere with the pilot's ability to perform, disrupts communications. It can make people just shut down. Now you've lost an important resource on the flight deck. It causes loss of trust and respect. And again, it can trigger the same stress, distraction, loss of concentration. And in the threat and error management model, it moves a crew member into the red, which means you've just kind of lost, like I said, lost that person. So it threatens the safety of flight, and it can contribute to incidents, accidents, or be a violation of FARs. For companies and institutions, harassment lowers morale, and it can spark a lawsuit. generate negative publicity and damage the reputation of that company, and hurts the bottom line. And in our whole industry, of course, it poses safety risks, repels people from aviation and from aviation careers, and it contributes to financial expenditures and losses. So in our industry, harassment can keep women and other people from accessing the joy of flight and satisfaction of aviation careers. So I'm ready for questions and answers. If Dr. Randolph Graham is ready to present those to me, I'll do my very best.